What's up, MMA fanatics? Welcome back to the channel where we break down the craziest drama happening in the octagon and behind the scenes. If you thought 2024 was wild, buckle up because the MMA world is absolutely exploding right now, with controversies that are shaking the entire sport to its core. We've got fighters threatening to leave the UFC, champions breaking their silence on devastating losses, legends facing serious allegations, and Dana White making moves that have the entire MMA community up in arms. This isn't just your typical fight news. This is the kind of drama that changes careers, destroys legacies, and reshapes the entire landscape of mixed martial arts. Today, we're diving deep into the most insane stories that have everyone talking. From Jon Jones shutting down fights that fans are dying to see, to Justin Gaethje literally threatening to walk away from the UFC, to Sean O'Malley finally speaking out after his shocking defeat. We're covering it all. So smash that like button if you're ready for some unfiltered MMA truth. Hit subscribe because you know we bring you the hottest takes, and let's jump into this absolute madness. Let's start with the bombshell that had the entire MMA world shook. Sean O'Malley finally breaking his silence after that devastating loss to Merab Dvalishvili. And let me tell you, what he said will blow your mind. For weeks, Suga Sean was radio silent after getting absolutely dominated by the Georgian nightmare Merab Dvalishvili at UFC 316. The bantamweight division was holding its breath, wondering how the flashy, trash-talking champion would handle his first real taste of defeat at the highest level. Well, the wait is over, and O'Malley's response is not what anyone expected. Here's where it gets crazy. O'Malley didn't just admit defeat. He completely broke down the mental warfare that was happening behind the scenes. He revealed that the pressure of being champion was eating him alive, and that Merab's relentless pace and wrestling completely exposed weaknesses in his game that he didn't even know existed. But wait, it gets even more intense. O'Malley dropped some serious truth bombs about the UFC's treatment of champions and how the organization puts fighters in impossible positions. He talked about how the constant media obligations, the pressure to be a superstar, and the expectation to always be on was mentally draining him before he even stepped into the octagon. The most shocking part? O'Malley admitted that he was considering taking a long break from fighting after the loss. Can you imagine? One of the most exciting strikers in the bantamweight division potentially walking away in his prime because of the mental toll of being at the top. And here's the kicker. He also addressed all the critics who said he was overrated and only fought easy opponents. O'Malley fired back hard, saying that everyone calling him overrated can now see what happens when you face elite competition every single fight. He basically said, "You wanted to see me tested? Well, now you've seen it." And this is what real championship-level fighting looks like. The MMA community's reaction has been absolutely wild. Some fans are praising his honesty and vulnerability, while others are saying this proves he was never championship material to begin with. But here's what's really interesting. Veteran fighters are coming out of the woodwork to support O'Malley, saying that his honesty about the mental side of fighting is exactly what the sport needs. Now let's talk about something that has Dana White probably losing sleep at night. Justin Gaethje, one of the most violent and exciting fighters in the entire UFC, threatening to leave the organization. This isn't some publicity stunt or negotiation tactic. Gaethje is dead serious, and the reasons why will make your blood boil. The highlight has been one of the UFC's most reliable action fighters for years. Every single time this man steps into the octagon, you know you're getting a war. He's the guy who saved multiple UFC cards, always shows up to fight, never pulls out due to injury, and consistently delivers the kind of performances that make casual fans into hardcore MMA addicts. So what could possibly make a loyal soldier like Gaethje threaten to walk away? It all comes down to respect and how the UFC treats its fighters who aren't necessarily champions, but are absolutely essential to the success of the organization. Gaethje went off in a recent interview, And I mean, he held nothing back. He called out the UFC's ranking system, saying it's completely rigged and political. He pointed out how fighters who talk trash and create drama get title shots over guys who actually earn them through their performances in the octagon. But here's where it gets really spicy. Gaethje specifically called out how the UFC promotes certain fighters while completely ignoring others who do all the heavy lifting. He said he's tired of being the guy who makes other fighters look good, who takes all the damage in wars, and who saves cards when other fighters pull out, only to watch less deserving fighters get pushed ahead of him. The breaking point? Gaethje revealed that he's been asking for specific fights for months, fights that make sense for his career and for the fans. But the UFC keeps giving him the runaround while pushing forward with matchups that are clearly designed to build up other fighters at his expense. And get this, he didn't just threaten to leave, he laid out his demands. Gaethje wants a guaranteed title shot timeline, better pay structure for non-title fights, and most importantly, he wants the UFC to stop using him as a stepping stone for their golden boys. The MMA community is split on this one. Some fans are saying Gaethje is being a diva and should just fight whoever the UFC puts in front of him. But the majority of hardcore fans and fighters are backing Gaethje 100%, saying that his complaints are exactly what's wrong with how the UFC treats its roster. Here's the scary part for Dana White. If Gaethje actually leaves, it sets a precedent for other fighters to make similar demands. And let's be real, Gaethje has the name, recognition, and fan following to potentially succeed in other organizations or even boxing. All right, now we're getting into the really controversial stuff. Jon Jones, arguably the greatest fighter of all time, completely shutting down what could be the biggest heavyweight fight in UFC history against Tom Aspinall. And the way he's doing it has the entire MMA world absolutely furious. Let's set the stage here. Tom Aspinall is the interim heavyweight champion. He's on an absolute tear through the division, and he's been calling out Jon Jones for months. The fans want this fight. The media wants this fight. And even Dana White seems to want this fight. So why is Jon Jones acting like Tom Aspinall doesn't even exist? Here's where it gets really interesting. Jones isn't just ignoring Aspinall. He's actively dismissing him in the most disrespectful way possible. In recent interviews, Jones has basically said that Aspinall hasn't earned the right to fight him, that he's not a big enough name, and that there are more legacy fights out there for him. But wait, it gets even more controversial. Jones has been pushing for a fight with Alex Pereira instead, completely bypassing the interim champion who, by all logic and UFC precedent, should be next in line. This has created a situation where the heavyweight division is basically frozen because the undisputed champion refuses to fight the interim champion. The MMA community is absolutely losing their minds over this. Fans are calling Jones scared, saying he's ducking Aspinall because he knows the young Brit has the tools to beat him. And honestly, when you look at the matchup on paper, you can understand why some people think Jones might be hesitant. Aspinall is younger, faster, has knockout power in both hands, and his ground game is absolutely elite. He's also been finishing fights left and right, while Jones's last few performances have been, let's say, less than spectacular. The optics of an aging Jones potentially losing to a hungry young lion like Aspinall would be devastating for his legacy. But here's Jones's side of the story, and it's actually pretty compelling. He's saying that he's earned the right to choose his fights at this stage of his career. He's been the champion for so long, faced so many killers, and proven himself so many times that he shouldn't have to take fights just because the UFC or fans want them. Jones is also making the argument that Aspinall needs to build his name more before deserving a fight with the GOAT. He's saying that beating a few heavyweights doesn't automatically make you worthy of a legacy fight with someone who's been dominating for over a decade. The plot thickens even more when you consider the business side of things. Jones versus Pereira would probably do bigger pay-per-view numbers than Jones versus Aspinall, simply because Pereira has that crossover appeal and knockout highlight reel that casual fans love. But here's what's really got people heated. This situation is exposing some serious flaws in the UFC's championship structure. How can you have an interim champion who can't get a fight with the undisputed champion? It makes the whole interim title seem meaningless. Now let's talk about something that has the entire MMA community questioning Dana White's leadership. The recent fighter releases that have everyone asking if the UFC president has completely lost touch with what makes this sport great. Dana White has always been known for making tough business decisions, but his recent moves have crossed a line that has fighters, fans, and media members absolutely furious. We're not just talking about cutting fighters who aren't performing. We're talking about releasing guys who have been loyal to the organization, who have put on exciting fights, and who represent everything that's supposed to be good about MMA. Here's what's really got people heated. The fighters being released aren't just random guys on losing streaks. These are fighters who have been with the UFC for years, who have taken short-notice fights to save cards, and who have consistently delivered entertainment value even when they weren't winning. The most controversial release? A fighter who literally took a fight on 2 weeks' notice to save a main card, put on an absolute war, lost a close decision, and then got cut the next week. The message this sends to the rest of the roster is absolutely chilling. It doesn't matter how loyal you are, how exciting your fights are, or how much you sacrifice for the company. If you lose, you're gone. But it gets even worse. Multiple sources are reporting that these releases aren't just about performance. They're about money. The UFC is apparently cutting higher-paid veterans to make room for cheaper, younger fighters who will work for less money. This is straight-up corporate greed disguised as roster management. The MMA community's reaction has been swift and brutal. Current UFC fighters are speaking out on social media, saying they're scared that they could be next. Former fighters are calling Dana White out publicly, saying this proves the UFC doesn't care about fighters as human beings, only as profit centers. Here's the really scary part. Veteran fighters are now saying they can't trust the UFC to have their backs. Guys who have been with the organization for years are starting to look at other options because they realize that loyalty means nothing if you're not making the company money. And the fans? They're absolutely livid. Social media is blowing up with people saying they're going to boycott UFC events until the organization starts treating fighters better. The hashtag #FCGREED has been trending for days. But Dana White's response to all this criticism? He's doubling down. In recent interviews, he's basically said that this is just business, that fighters need to perform or they'll be replaced, and that anyone who doesn't like it can go fight somewhere else. This attitude is creating a toxic environment where fighters are more focused on job security than on putting on exciting fights. When fighters are scared of being cut after one bad performance, they're going to fight more conservatively, which makes for worse fights, which hurts the sport overall. Let's dive into one of the most heated debates in MMA right now, Ilia Topuria's potential move to lightweight, and why it has everyone from fans to fellow fighters absolutely concerned. This isn't just about a fighter changing weight classes. This is about a decision that could completely change the trajectory of one of the sport's brightest stars. Ilia El Matador Topuria has been absolutely destroying the featherweight division. This guy knocked out Alexander Volkanovski, who many considered unbeatable at 145 pounds. He's got knockout power that seems almost supernatural, technical striking that's off the charts, and the kind of confidence that makes you believe he could beat anyone on any given night. So why is everyone freaking out about him potentially moving up to lightweight? Here's where it gets complicated and controversial. First, let's talk about the physical concerns that have MMA experts worried. Topuria already has a tough cut to make 145 pounds, and anyone who's watched him on Fight Week knows that the weight cut is taking a serious toll on his body. Moving up to 155 would obviously solve that problem. But here's the catch. The lightweight division is an absolute shark tank right now. At featherweight, Topuria is a big, strong champion who can impose his will on smaller opponents. At lightweight, he'd be facing guys like Islam Makhachev, who's not just bigger, but also has wrestling skills that could completely neutralize Topuria's striking. Then you've got killers like Charles Oliveira, Justin Gaethje, and Dustin Poirier, who have been battling elite competition for years. But here's what's really got people concerned. Topuria's team might be making this decision for the wrong reasons. Sources close to the situation are saying that the move to lightweight isn't about what's best for Topuria's career, but about chasing bigger paydays and more high-profile fights. The featherweight division is finally in a great place with Topuria as champion. He's got potential super fights with guys like Sean O'Malley moving up, or even Conor McGregor if he ever decides to come back. Why would you abandon a division where you're the king to go to a division where you might struggle to even get a title shot? Here's where the controversy gets even spicier. Multiple featherweight contenders are calling out Topuria for potentially abandoning the division before cleaning it out. They're saying he's scared to face the real killers at 145 and is looking for an easy way out by moving up. But Topuria's supporters are firing back hard. They're saying that moving to lightweight shows he's not afraid of anyone and that he wants to test himself against the best fighters in the world, regardless of weight class. They're comparing him to legends like BJ Penn and Conor McGregor, who became champions in multiple divisions. The business side of this decision is absolutely fascinating. If Topuria moves to lightweight and becomes a two-division champion, he instantly becomes one of the biggest stars in the sport. But if he moves up and struggles, it could completely derail the momentum he's built as the featherweight king. Dana White's position on this is typically confusing. In some interviews, he's encouraging Topuria to stay at featherweight and build his legacy there. In others, he's talking about how exciting it would be to see Topuria challenge for the lightweight title. Classic Dana, keeping everyone guessing. Now we need to address the elephant in the room. The serious allegations surrounding Jon Jones that have the MMA world completely divided. This isn't just another Jon Jones controversy. This is something that could potentially end the career of the man many consider the greatest fighter of all time. Let's be clear from the start. These are allegations, and Jon Jones deserves the presumption of innocence until proven otherwise. But the nature of these allegations and the way they're being handled has created a firestorm that's impossible to ignore. Without getting into specific details that could be legally problematic, what we can say is that these allegations go beyond Jones's previous legal troubles. We're not talking about traffic violations or failed drug tests. These are allegations that strike at the very core of what it means to be a role model and representative of the sport. The MMA community's reaction has been absolutely explosive. You've got fighters, fans, and media members taking sides in a way we haven't seen since the early days of Jones's career. Some people are saying that Jones has had too many chances and that the sport needs to move on from him regardless of his fighting ability. Others are arguing that allegations aren't convictions and that we shouldn't destroy a man's legacy based on unproven claims. Here's what makes this situation so complicated. Jon Jones isn't just any fighter. He's the guy who many consider the GOAT, the face of the heavyweight division, and someone who the UFC has invested millions of dollars in promoting. If these allegations turn out to be true, it doesn't just hurt Jones, it damages the entire sport. But here's where it gets even more controversial. The timing of these allegations coming out. Jones is at the peak of his heavyweight run. He's got potential super fights on the horizon, and he's making more money than ever before. Some people are questioning whether the timing is coincidental or if there are other factors at play. The UFC's handling of this situation has been absolutely bizarre. Dana White has been mostly silent, which is completely out of character for someone who usually has an opinion on everything. This silence is speaking volumes and has people wondering if the UFC knows something that the public doesn't. What's really got the MMA world shook is how this affects the heavyweight division. If Jones gets suspended, or decides to step away from fighting, what happens to the title? Does Tom Aspinall automatically become the undisputed champion? Do they strip Jones and create a tournament? The uncertainty is killing the momentum of the entire division. Fellow fighters have been walking a tightrope when asked about the situation. Most are giving diplomatic answers about letting the legal process play out, but you can tell that privately, many of them have strong opinions about what should happen. The fans are absolutely split down the middle. Jones's supporters are saying this is just another attempt to tear down a successful black athlete, while his critics are saying this is the final straw that proves Jones has never learned from his mistakes. Here's what's really scary for Jones. Even if these allegations don't result in criminal charges, the court of public opinion might have already made its decision. In today's social media world, perception often becomes reality, and Jones's reputation might never recover regardless of what happens legally. Let's talk about the performance that shocked the MMA world and completely changed the bantamweight division: Merab Dvalishvili's absolute domination of Sean O'Malley. This wasn't just a win. This was a statement that has everyone reevaluating what they thought they knew about both fighters. Going into UFC 316, most people expected a competitive fight between two elite bantamweights with completely different styles. O'Malley had the striking, the reach, the knockout power, and the confidence of a champion. Merab had the wrestling, the cardio, and the relentless pressure that had carried him through his entire UFC run. What nobody expected was for Merab to make Sean O'Malley look like he didn't belong in the same octagon. From the opening bell, the machine was in complete control, taking O'Malley down at will, controlling him on the ground, and making the flashy striker look absolutely helpless. But here's what made this performance so incredible. It wasn't just the wrestling. Merab was actually outstriking O'Malley on the feet too. He was landing cleaner shots, moving better, and showing boxing skills that nobody knew he had. This was a complete evolution of Merab as a fighter. The MMA community's reaction was absolutely wild. People who had written off Merab as just a wrestler were suddenly calling him one of the most complete fighters in the division. Meanwhile, O'Malley fans were in complete shock, trying to figure out how their guy got so thoroughly dominated. Here's where it gets really interesting. This performance didn't just change how people view Merab, it completely shifted the entire bantamweight landscape. Suddenly, fighters who thought they had O'Malley figured out are realizing they need to completely reevaluate their game plans for the new champion. Merab's post-fight celebration was absolutely epic. The emotion, the tears, the celebration with his team, you could tell this meant everything to him. This wasn't just winning a title. This was validation for years of being overlooked and underestimated. But here's what's really got people talking: Merab's callouts after the fight. Instead of taking the typical route of calling out big names for money fights, Merab is talking about cleaning out the division and proving he's the best bantamweight in the world. This old-school mentality is refreshing in a sport that's become increasingly focused on entertainment over competition. The technical breakdown of this fight is absolutely fascinating. Merab showed improvements in every area of his game. His striking looked sharper, his wrestling was more explosive, and his cardio was somehow even better than usual. Meanwhile, O'Malley looked like he had no answers for Merab's pressure and physicality. What this means for the bantamweight division going forward is huge. Merab's style is a nightmare matchup for a lot of the top contenders. His wrestling neutralizes strikers, his cardio breaks down fighters who rely on explosive bursts, and his improved striking means he's not just a one-dimensional wrestler anymore. So there you have it, MMA fanatics, the absolute chaos that's currently consuming the world of mixed martial arts. From champions breaking their silence on devastating losses, to legends facing serious allegations, to fighters threatening to leave the UFC entirely, we're living through one of the most dramatic periods in MMA history. What does all this mean for the future of the sport? Honestly, nobody knows. The heavyweight division is in limbo. Because of Jon Jones's situation, the bantamweight division has a new king in Merab Dvalishvili. Fighters are questioning their loyalty to the UFC, and fans are more divided than ever on what they want from their favorite fighters. One thing is certain: the old ways of doing business in MMA are being challenged like never before. Fighters are demanding more respect, better pay, and fair treatment. Fans are expecting more transparency and accountability from promoters, and the media is asking harder questions about the sport's biggest stars. The next few months are going to be absolutely crucial for determining the direction of MMA. Will Jon Jones fight again, or will his legal troubles end his career? Will Justin Gaethje actually leave the UFC, or will they meet his demands? Will Sean O'Malley bounce back from his loss, or will it derail his career? Will Dana White change how he treats fighters, or will more stars threaten to leave? These aren't just individual stories. They're all connected pieces of a larger puzzle that's reshaping the entire sport. The decisions made in the coming weeks and months will determine whether MMA continues to grow and evolve, or whether it gets stuck in the same old patterns that have held it back. What we do know is that MMA has never been more unpredictable, more controversial, or more compelling. Every week brings new drama, new storylines, and new reasons to be completely obsessed with this incredible sport. So what do you think, MMA fanatics? Are these controversies good for the sport because they create buzz and get people talking? Or are they damaging MMA's reputation and driving away casual fans? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into MMA's biggest controversies, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe for more unfiltered MMA content, and hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest videos. We've got more explosive content coming your way, including exclusive interviews, fight breakdowns, and behind-the-scenes stories that you won't find anywhere else. Until next time, keep training, keep watching, and keep supporting the greatest sport in the world. Peace out, MMA Zone family.